Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com and I'm here today with a new product announcement video for the various new 1/6 scale M4 high-speed tractor detail components. In this video, we're going to be showcasing a bunch of new detail parts that have just been released and added to the EastCoastArmory.com catalog. The direct link to the components can be found in the video description listed below. All of the detail components in this video were designed by request, and this is something that I frequently mention in these videos, and it appears that a lot of people out there have been taking me up on this, but if you are working on a project and you come across a need for a detail component of one flavor or another, and you do not see it listed on the EastCoastArmory.com catalog, don't be afraid to reach out via an email. In most cases, I'm able to do the design work, create the component, and then just simply add it to the catalog. My contact email is listed below, which is info@EastCoastArmory.com. Starting this video off strong takes us to a new set of parts for a vehicle that I haven't done any dedicated parts for in the past, and that would be the M4 high-speed tractor. These components over here were, as you're going to be seeing quite frequently mentioned in this video, designed purely by request. I had a customer out there that was working on not one but a few M4 high-speed tractors in 1/6 scale, and he needed certain detail components that were absent on the market or even on the kit itself. He reached out and I was able to go ahead and work with him and tool up the various components that are going to be shown in this video. Starting off with the ECA M4 high-speed tractor headlight set. The M4 high-speed tractor has a very distinctive headlight cluster, and it's one of those things where if you see it, it just sticks with you, and it's an iconic bit of detailing, and obviously it's one that was really lacking on the kit that he was working on. The ECA set contains all the components over here, and this is enough to supply you for one M4 high-speed tractor. The M4 high-speed tractor doesn't utilize two standard headlights, it utilizes four. Two in the front and two in the back. So let's go ahead and go over what the set actually gives you. I'm going to start from the middle and work my way outward. So the first thing I'm going to start with are the headlight housings themselves. The headlight housings, along with all the other components here, are in fact, of course, 3D printed. And the units are a single 3D print, or as much as I could get on a single print as possible. So here you have the headlight housing itself. Note, it is a substantial size component. This is, again, true to form to the real one. Fortunately for designing these parts, and same is true for all the other parts in this video, I had some excellent resources available to me that allowed me to go ahead and tool up the parts that I'm bringing to you. So the headlight housings are first interior and exterior detailed. With the M4 high-speed tractor, with the way it's the nature of the beast is, you do have some cabin interior detailing, and on the real unit, you would have the pan section of the housing present and totally visible on the inside. So on the ECA set, I give you that detailing. So on the outer portion, we have this section that we have right here. It does have the appropriate detailing where we have this little lump right here in the middle. The real ones, of course, would be stamped. So I went ahead and tried to incorporate as much as that geometry on this set as possible in order to make it look appropriate. We have this little plug here on the side. This here is for a power cable, which I'll get to in a moment. The unit is pre-drilled out, and it's also hollow through and through. Why would I do that? Well, stay tuned. The other thing to mention on the interior portion, that we also have these protrusions coming down. These are for fasteners. The fasteners are purely just for detail, and it's a why not bit of detailing. You could snip these off and install just in that manner, or you could actually use small little nuts on the interior portion and have it represented in that format as well. On the interior, I should say on the exterior portion, we have here the outer flange that has the fastener heads here present. And we also have the interior dome section of the housing represented as well. As I mentioned before, the unit is hollow printed. And as you can see, we have this small little hole here in the middle, and the reason this was done is that this thing here is actually ready for lights out of the box. With the way the units are, you could hook up an LED or a small light bulb found on the inside, and you can actually have them powered, so without any sort of extra modifications needs to be done to the parts themselves, the only addition you need are just the electrical work, and you can have the things fully functional. Which also ties into the next bit, which is the lens itself. The lens, you'll notice, is printed in a translucent resin material, has the detailing here for the face, and just like with many other components that are similar to this found in the ECA catalog, this guy here just drops directly in place right there. And as you can see, this thing will give you phenomenally accurately detail. It's way better going with this route as opposed to trying to make it in an opaque material and then just paint it silver or something along those lines. For a small scale build, yeah, but for something 1/6 scale, yeah, no, it looks great when you have an actual lens. And in addition of it, of course, looking more realistic, this allows you perfect access to go ahead and put the light emitter with one flavor or another on the inside, top it off right there. The lens just drops directly into a little recess that we have right here, printed onto the housing itself, and the piece is just all, again, designed to function in this manner. So the other thing to mention is that the headlights are actually a left and right hand type assembly, and this is actually relevant due to the way the wiring configuration is found on the real vehicle. Fortunately, there are some really good references online for these things, and tracking one down or some images down are also easily done. In addition to the headlights themselves, the other most iconic bit of detailing, of course, for the M4 high-speed tractor are not just the lights, but the brush guards. This is something that is purely M4 high-speed tractor, and was actually really fun during the design process to come up with the parts that we have here. So the brush guard is a single 3D print, and it has all of the appropriate detailing that will be found on the real unit. Starting with the base plate here, we have the little cutouts on these two sections. This, again, was lifted right off the real one. And we also have these two tube structures that are welded on either end. The unit does have its weld beads integrally printed on. So again, all of the detail accuracy is present on this piece. No sculpting needs to be done by the builder. The next thing, and of course it's the most eye-catching part about the brush guard, is the design of the guard itself. This thing on the real unit is all comprised of bent wrought iron that was all bent to shape in a certain layout and then just spot welded or tack welded together, giving you for the brush guard. And on this one here, I made it as realistic as humanly possible. So if you look at the wrought iron, you'll see that it's just basically essentially mimicking the real one, where it would just be bent and then welded to the bottom base that we have here. Yes, the welds are integrally printed on as well. And you can see the correct number of all of the pieces, I might add. The two on the end and the one in the center, you'll notice that they are not just molded flush like you see on many other models out there in smaller scale. Instead, they are done appropriately where the rods are beneath the outer portion of the cage itself. And this piece, once installed on the model, will definitely be one of the high points. The other thing to mention is that the pieces are printed hollow, as you can see right here and here. Why did I do that? Well, you see on the real unit, this piece here fits over the unit just like so. And whenever you need to get access to the bulb, well, you pull a pin and the piece actually hinges open just like so. The hinge is functional on the ECA set, and that's on the sprue here. Sprue gives you more than enough hinges for one vehicle. And also not shown on the table are the pins that actually lock everything together. In addition to the pins, it also comes with a length of wire, again for the static wire detailing that was also referenced. Back to the hinges, they are integrally printed, as you can see, or hopefully it comes out on camera. Oh, there we go. And we have the bracket. We even have the fastener head sections integrally printed on. So again, I'm trying to make these things as simple as possible for the end user to assemble. For the pins themselves, obviously I'm not going to use 3D print for that. It's best to go with a metal type material. So a length of wire or a wire brad of one flavor or another will be supplied with these sets. And while on the topic of the lights, takes us to the other bit of important lights for an M4 high-speed tractor, which are the blackout lights. Again, these sets here are going to be listed on the ECA catalog, on the same place you can find the other units I just mentioned, and of course the links can be found in the video description. So these ones here are a set that goes with the other one in order to, again, complete the look of the vehicle. So the units here are specifically, again, for the high-speed tractor, and they are for the blackout lights exclusively. With the way the M4 high-speed tractor is designed, there are two sections for blackout lights, and they are not a mirror image, they are definitely a left and right hand specific set. The ECA set gives you basically everything you need in order to flesh the piece out. Currently, the way you see it, it's in its assembled format, so I'm kind of going backwards here, but this is what they would look like fitted to the vehicle. Now, just imagine it just sticking out of that front section, and you'll get the idea. So, on the large section over here, it's comprised of 3 pieces. The first is the well. The well is the most biggest component of the set, and it has everything integrally printed on. So the blackout light, the large unit, and the small unit are also just built in as a single printing. So this definitely cuts down on part count immensely. The unit is contained in this well that we have here, and the well is true to form to the real one with the appropriate geometry found on the well itself. Note, all of the edges are nice and curved, again, replicating, I should say, the real one as much as possible. However, it doesn't end there, because on the back portion, where we have a plate found on the rear area, it is welded and the weld beads are integrally printed on. In order to secure this to the vehicle, you are going to have to take some careful measurements, and you have to carefully remove the material found on the model itself, and then this guy here, just like the real one, slips into place. With the way the front of the M4 high-speed tractor is, it kind of has a bevel or a point to it like that, and this piece here will actually protrude like this from the unit slightly. Again, that's just the nature of the beast. Also, just like with the headlight, these units here are printed hollow, so in case you want to go ahead and make these things function as well, that's also an option that can be done from the get-go. You don't have to do any real modifications to the parts themselves. That's for the double cluster. The single cluster, you can see again what it looks like finished. The single cluster is basically the same exact feature with the one blackout light. However, it only features the one, so it's much smaller in its size, but it still features the same type of weld type system, where we have a back plate here that's also welded in place. For the small blackout light, these are the ECA ones that were on the catalog. These headlights are also recycled from other ECA sets. And if anyone has seen the Sherman builds, actually no, I haven't yet to use these on one of my Shermans, but I will do at some point in the future. But these ones are straight off the catalog. They are printed in the same translucent resin as the other components that I just mentioned before for the same reason. And when you're painting these, you want to make sure not to paint the center portion, just paint around the unit over here, and you leave the center portion just natural. And this again will give you the natural look of the part if you're leaving it static. Or if you can have an LED on the inside, it will permit the light to shine through that little section, again, improving and enhancing the accuracy. The conical section, though, is a new design component. This is something I just lifted off of some real examples, and basically what you see is what you get. The unit, I should say the housings themselves are drilled out so that you can have the wiring emit from these areas over here, which again for an M4 high-speed tractor is relevant, not just if you want to make them work, but again for the internal detailing, there would be electrical wiring running all over the front section of the cabin. And that takes us to the larger blackout light, and this is a brand new ECA component and something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, but finally I got the opportunity to do it. This unit here is going to be sold also separately, as opposed to just in the housing that we have in this format, because this piece is a very commonly found piece on many American armored fighting vehicles from the 1940s time frame all the way up until really the 1950s and even into the 60s time era as well. It has the appropriate shape, again, it has the same type of hollow format as I referenced, but we also have the detailing here on the mounting base and bracket. The bracket is actually welded to the back portion here of the plate, and the welds are integrally printed on. Currently, we have some support structures that are found, and this is just left over from the print. The user needs to go in there with a X-Acto or a small clean cut snip and just clean it up a little bit in order to get the piece to be in its appropriate format. However, being a single print, it doesn't really take much work to do. The coolest part, though, on the larger blackout light is indeed the faceplate. This was one I actually had some pleasure working on. So the faceplate is a very distinctive part found on these these vehicles, and it's all made from steel stampings. And I incorporate as much of that geometry onto this piece as possible. So we have this large hood in this section over here. Of course, this is just to prevent light from bleeding out and giving away your position. The piece is detailed out to replicate the stampings found on the real unit. And we also have this distinctive cutout here on the front, and in me, I always refer to it as the Aztec temple because it has these like square steps to it, much along the lines of an Aztec temple. So that's why I always refer to it as such. And it's kind of fun tracing the real one and bringing it to CAD and doing the cutouts. On the inner portion over here, you can see that this is actually a separate piece from the face stamping, and you can see some of the geometry that mimics that. And also, one thing that's interesting to point out is that the portion here where we have the Aztec actually is sunk in. It's not just on the face portion of the round half, and it actually goes inside the area over here. Again, probably giving it a little bit more extra protection and concealing a little bit of extra light, preventing it from bleeding out. But the most interesting and the coolest part was with the stamping of the information. So this is something hopefully that comes out on camera, but the unit had a very interesting little set of verbiage on it. For instance, the eye guide right over there, and then it actually has the information on the manufacturer, I believe, that produced this unit here, and as well as the stock code, and all that information is found on the ECA printing. This, again, is something where 3D printing is really, really awesome. Trying to do this the old-fashioned way would have been very, very hard, if not impossible. So having the ability to do this in a single print, no less, is something that is really, really cool. And once this thing is painted, weathered, maybe with a little shot of, to me, a panel line accent, woo, it's definitely going to be a beautiful focal point on this model, and it'll make and enhance any vehicle that these things are fitted on, be it an M4 high-speed tractor like this one here, or a standard Jeep, Dodge WC, whatever. If it's got this siren on it, it's going to be a really nice addition to have on your vehicle. Carrying on with the new parts takes us to the batch of parts that we have here strewn on the table, which, by the way, are all, again, order outgoing. But either way, these here are the new ECA US M14 Canister Set. The M14, not to be confused with the rifle, is a canister set that was used for U.S. artillery propellant storage, and was something that was commonly used during World War II, all the way up until really, I want to say, the present day. The propellant for the artillery shells, of course, are either kept in a canvas-type bag, and to protect them, they are stored in these very distinctive metal canisters. The sets that we have here are the M14 pattern. However, I also made the M13 pattern, which look very similar to these ones here in size and shape. The only difference is that one is a little bit squatter and fatter compared to the tall, skinny one here. The other variant is known as the M13. Those are indeed available on the ECA catalog, and unfortunately I don't have any on the table at this time, but I'll go ahead and roll some sample pictures of the CAD file so you get an idea of what the pieces look like. Designing these parts were actually really fun. It was really cool to tackle one of these units. These are the type of things that I would always see in photographs, as well as even in surplus stores for sale. They're always clunking around, but having the opportunity to design one and produce them in 1/6 scale is definitely one that feels pretty good. And of course, I had some really good references out there, and what you see on these models over here, I was able to accumulate from all the various reference pictures I was able to track down for these units online. And because of that, I did not hold anything back, and I basically made them as good as I possibly can. But enough going on back here. Let me go ahead and zoom into one of these units over here so you get a better idea of what the detailing on this unit actually supplies you with. Alright, so I'm just going to grab this fellow right over here because he's actually the easiest one to grab. But obviously all of the units here are the exact same type of printing. So the units, of course, are all 3D printed, and they are 3D printed in the same material that we saw before on the previous items for the M4 high-speed tractor. And what's interesting about the units is that I made them to scale thickness, and the material that these are printed in are, again, basically mimic injection molded polystyrene very closely, but are also somewhat durable. And for this over here, it bridges the gap between durability and detail fidelity. The unit is a single 3D printing, and again, this is one aspect of this technology I absolutely love, because trying to do this the old-fashioned way, you would have to have it as a multi-piece assembly, which for something like this, it's doable, of course, but it's something that's less than ideal. This guy here, he's a single 3D printing, so you're good to go from the get-go. However, this is not entirely a single printing, because there is an extra bit of equipment that is printed separately, and that's done for a reason. Before we go into that, let's go ahead and actually look at the canister itself. So here we have the body of the canister. The unit has all of the appropriate detailing present. So starting from the back and working our way to the top, first you'll notice that the floor is indented as per the real unit. Where the floor stamping would be secured in place, we have this ring section that is stamped into the piece over here, and again, this was lifted from a real unit. What's also interesting to point out is that as the years went on, the units still stayed in US inventory and were still in production. However, the production subtleties did change on these things as the years went on. More than likely, they found different vendors to produce these things, and they also found more efficient ways to actually make them with more modern tooling. And for this one over here, from what I was able to tell, this here is the more common pattern that we saw in the World War II and also in the immediate post-war time frame. So that's why we have this little groove here. There are some other units out there where the groove is not present, and there's just a number of spot welds. In addition to that, the entire tube itself is actually a flat piece of steel that's rolled into shape, and then it's just pressed and welded in order to obtain the cylindrical shape. And the byproduct of that is that we have this small little seam found running from top to bottom, as you can see right here. Hopefully it comes out in camera, but hopefully you can see the little seam that we have right here that is present. Again, try to make these as prototypical as humanly possible. Goes all the way from the bottom and runs directly to the top. And this takes us to the guard. So one really iconic and distinctive thing about these canisters is that the guards on them are cylindrical in shape. And yes, later on I have seen them where they were more of a box or hexagonal type shape, but again, that's a topic for another day. For the old school World War II ones, they were round, and the guards themselves were just steel stampings that were simply just spot welded in place. The bottom one over here, you can see it's a hollow piece to mimic the stamped appearance of the real one. And we also have the geometry here where it's all swooped and curvy, again, to replicate the stamp pattern that would be present on the real unit. Also, one thing that's really subtle to see are the three little drainage holes that we have here, here, and here. Again, lifted directly off of the real example and are found on the ECA printing. This moves us to the top section of the guard itself, and the top section does twofold. First, it acts as a guard, but the second is this acts as the clamp where the lid can lock into place. And obviously, you'll see that the piece is a hollow 3D printing. So the piece is just like the real one, where it's nice and hollow. This does many benefits. First, it saves on weight. This thing's extremely light. Two, it makes it very accurate, where you could actually model this thing in the open or closed state, say for a diorama setting or for a figure type display. And the other thing is just, well, again, if it's like that on the real one, I'm going to try to bring it into the model one. We'll go over the lid in a moment, because there's a lot of real cool stuff going on the lid as well. So back to the thing itself, we have here another interesting bit of the design where we have another embossed stamping right over here, and this is kind of like a reverse like we see on this section where we have it crimped in place. On this side it's actually crimped outward, and this is a nice little shelf for the top stamping piece to just slide onto, and then they could spot weld it in place in a nice even manner. If the camera can zoom in, you get to see what I'm talking about, and the detailing should be coming through on camera. On the top guard, again, just like with the bottom, this is a steel stamping, and so all of the geometric patterns and scale thicknesses were brought into the piece to mimic that look. On the inner portion over here, you get to see that the tube itself extends past the floor portion of the guard, again, as per the real unit. And back onto the guard itself, the stamping geometry is again found on the outside and inner portion to, again, achieve maximum accuracy. Also, on that note, you can see where the three little lock tab sections are present, and if it goes into focus, hopefully you get to see the geometry found on these sections here and how the piece would actually function and lock in place. On the real unit, again, this is a single stamping, and they just press into these sections over here. And so you have these cutouts, and then we have these pressed in little box structures that are present on all three locations. Also, like with the one on the bottom, on the top we still have the three little drainage holes that you can see presently. Like I mentioned before, the tube is completely hollow through and through. So if you want to actually make the powder bags themselves or the propellant charges, you could do so with the ECA unit. And that's all there is to the actual canister itself, and this takes us to the lid. So here we can see one of the lids here on the table. The lid is also all comprised out of steel stampings. And again, as the years went on, there were several changes made to these sections over here. However, what you see here is essentially what the majority of the units look like. So I'll start with the inside portion. So we do have interior detailing on this area over here. Note the large sunken dome-like structure on this area. The geometry is lifted directly off of the real example I was using as reference. And we also have here a small little stamping of a round object with a perforation in the center. And on the real unit here, this is in order for it to mount the hardware for the locking handle. On the outer portion, you can see the stamped appearance of the lid itself. And remember when I stated before how the piece protrudes upward? Well, that's so it could actually lock into this section over here. And also on that note, around this area here, there is a rubber gasket that is present, and the rubber gasket is integrally printed onto the rim. Why this is relevant? So when you're painting this thing, be sure to just take a little bit of flat black paint on a very precision paintbrush and paint this little area over here, and the piece will be basically good to go in that format. So on the outer portion, we have again some very intricate and interesting geometry going with the way the stampings are. Note how we have the rim, how it comes up, curves over, and then how it goes back inside and has a nice little dome type appearance to it. Very distinctive shape. This takes us now to the locking mechanism, which is this very distinctive Fratzog Dodge type appearance to it, best way to put it. But what you see here is exactly what it looks like, and the geometry is correct. How the middle sections are, you can see, quite thick, and again, it's not really thick, it's just steel that's stamped into a channel. But however, the end portions are tapered and are thin. And again, this is for good reason, to clip into the sections that I mentioned before. Then we have the T-handle, and the T-handle also has some cutouts in these two sections. And this is one of the few pieces that are not made out of stampings. I believe this is actually just standard steel, and they just mill out these two sections. But either way, regardless of the construction material, you can see hopefully the detailing coming out on these sections here. Also on the top portion, we have the tabs, how they come to a point, again, as per the real unit. So, like I stated before, these things are functional and they will actually lock in place. To do so, just drop the guy directly onto this portion over here, like you can see. And then basically you just rotate until the piece locks into the little section, just like on the real unit. And the piece is secured in place. This comes standard with the sets, and this is also again true for not just the tall version, but also the stubby version as well. These sets here are obviously perfect for any type of artillery piece. You have any type of U.S. howitzer or a pack howitzer of one flavor or another, and you have a diorama setting, or you just even have an artillery crew. These accessories over here are absolutely crucial and will definitely spice everything up. Also, as a side note, first, all the ones you see on the table are spoken for. They're going out to a customer, while I do have actually a production set for myself of both the tall and shorter units. Those are going to be the subject matter of their own video where I paint and weather them and get them completed compared to the format that we have here. But these ones here are going to be off to the customer to parts unknown. One other thing I noticed from just general handling of these units is that one interesting aspect of the design is how the rims line up and do so in a way that actually conserves space. What I mean by that is if I take two of these canisters and line them up this way, you'll see that they do stack pretty well. However, there's a bit of extra space here that actually is inefficient and uses up more space, and you can actually store less in a certain volume. So what you do is you take the units and you invert them, and as you can see, in this manner, the rims lock up basically perfectly with one another and use up less space, which allows you to store more canisters in a given location. And also with the way the canisters kind of line up, they basically keep each other from rolling around, or for the most part. And then you could just Jenga these things by connecting more of them to one another, like in this format here. Just like this, and just like that. Bear with me. And as you can see, they actually stack pretty neatly. It's a nice, slick little design feature that these units do have. You could stack these things up as high as you want. You just need to basically get more of the canisters. Also, these things will look great in this format in a diorama setting or in a display type setup. And as a quick shameless plug, these things would also look pretty slick in a 1/6 scale Jeep trailer of one flavor or another, either being the standard Jeep trailer or the ECA Converto dump trailer. But again, that's just a quick shameless plug, needlessly out of the way. Continuing along takes us to an older item, but again, it's one of those items that's been on the catalog for quite some time, but here I have an opportunity to have a production unit on hand for you all to see. This here is the US World War II AFV comb device. The comb device is an interesting bit of equipment. It's also an iconic bit of equipment for World War II US vehicles. What it is it's this plate with these weird little grooves that are cut into it, and they're generally found on the front of the vehicle. On the Sherman, they are found generally on the transmission cover, but other vehicles like the M3 Stuart also have them found on the front hull. What exactly is this device? This is actually used to hook up ropes to it and to secure the brake levers in the tight position when the vehicle is placed on a boat. What that means is that on the inside of the vehicle, of course, they are driven with the use of brake levers. And in order to prevent the vehicle from potentially pitching or rolling around when the vehicle is on a ship going across seas during the pitching and moving of the waves, in order to help lock and keep the thing as secure as possible, you need to pull back on the brakes. And what they do is they have a string that ties the brakes, comes out through the bow MG hole, and then hooks to one of these little notches here. Sounds a bit convoluted, but it's actually a system that is fairly straightforward. Back to the part here, this here is one of about 3 different patterns that are found on US World War II AFV, and all 3 have their options found on the ECA catalog. There's the more complex one that actually has a little hinge section that comes down and helps lock it in place. This here is more of the simpler version where it's just a simple blade of steel with the notches cut in, and this one here is integrally welded, as you can see. So it's just a drop-in installation with no fuss, no muss. Just mark the location on the model, drill a hole, plug this bad boy in place, and you're good to go. And with that, that wraps up this new product announcement video for the various new 1/6 scale M4 high-speed tractor detail parts. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel, where it's a great way to keep up to date on new posted content, being 1/6 scale new product announcement videos like this one over here, or the other content being 1/6 scale project update videos and small scale model showcase videos when they get posted. Another way to keep in loop new posted content is by liking us on Facebook. There I have more photographs of all these items that have been announced, as well as photographs of the larger and smaller scale builds that have been seen on this channel in the past. Furthermore, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thanks again. I'll be seeing you all again on the next one. See you there.